Can you believe the fun history behind the Super Bowl halftime show? The Super Bowl halftime show is one of the most looked forward to events of the year. Every year, millions of people gather around their TV to watch the Super Bowl. Some are fans of the teams playing, some are fans of football, and some are just there to watch the halftime show. Over the past few decades, the Super Bowl halftime show has become more than just a concert. It's become part of pop culture and sports history. Obviously, we can't go through every single Super Bowl halftime show, or this would be an hour-long video, but rather, we'll highlight some various aspects, changes, and big acts over the decades. From its humble beginnings to its outrageous productions today, let's take a deep dive into the history of the Super Bowl halftime show. The Super Bowl halftime show began with the first Super Bowl in 1967. This was a game between the AFL and NFL when the Packers played the Chiefs at Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. The first Super Bowl halftime show would feature the University of Arizona's marching band, Grambling State's marching band, and Anaheim High School's drill team and flag girls. Most notably, the show would feature Al Hirt. Al Hirt was a famous trumpeter and band leader. Hirt most famously sold over 1 million records of his famed album Java. This show was a great celebration for the first Super Bowl and would begin a famous tradition. For the remainder of the 1960s, they would continue the tradition of marching bands, but downsize the scale. In 1968, Grambling State University Marching Band would perform, and in 1969, they would utilize Florida A&M paired with a Miami area high school band. The 1969 show would be a tad different, as this time they would have a theme of America Thanks. The 1970s would continue a similar style Super Bowl halftime show, but rather than just having a local band play, they would utilize a famous act, sort of like a headliner paired with an opening act. In the 1970s, they relied heavily on theming in the performances as well. The belief was that they could add a new layer to draw in more audiences to pay attention to the show in person and on TV. For example of theming, you can look at the 1970 Super Bowl in Tulane Stadium in New Orleans, where they celebrated Mardi Gras with songs like When the Saints Go Marching In and famous local American soprano entertainer Marguerite Piazza. Some of the other big-name headliners that came throughout the 70s were Ella Fitzgerald, Anita Bryant, and Andy Williams. The NFL began to understand the power of stardom and that they needed an act to really bring together the musical performances during the halftime show. Two of the most unique shows of the 1970s. The first was the 1976 Honor for the Bicentennial, where they celebrated 200 years and Just the Baby, a tribute to America's bicentennial. The performance would be Up With People, who is a song and dance troupe providing musical performances about society, life, and positivity. In the 1977 performance, the Walt Disney Company would bring about the theme of It's a Small World to honor its famous ride and the concept of togetherness. The performance would be done by the Los Angeles Unified All-City Band paired with the New Mouseketeers. It was one of the most interesting and bizarre shows of the 1970s and featured many famous Disney songs. The halftime shows in the 1980s would not be that exciting, but they would continue to utilize great themes like a salute to the big band era and Disney's salute to the superstars of the silver screen. A majority of these shows would once again feature university or local bands and a notable act. By the end of the 1980s, they would revert back to utilizing one big headliner paired with supporting acts. In 1988, they would utilize Chubby Checker paired with the Rockettes, and it would feature several local bands and university bands in the San Diego area. In 1989, the halftime show would take a big step forward with its first official sponsor, Diet Coke, which Diet Coke hoped to get a branding message across to audiences throughout the United States. The concept of local groups paired with a big name would take us into the 1990s. The 90s would bring some very interesting shows, including one that celebrated the 40th anniversary of the Peanuts Gang. The 1991 show would be sponsored by Disney and the Coca-Cola Company, and they would utilize New Kids on the Block as well as several Disney characters. Though these shows were very unique and different, and they all had great theming, Nothing could prepare the world for 1993, the Super Bowl halftime show that would change the Super Bowl halftime show forever. It would not feature local bands, it would not feature local groups. It would feature one man and one man only, Michael Jackson. The reason why they wanted to utilize Michael Jackson, arguably the biggest star in the world at that point, was because CBS was countered programmed the year before by Fox, who played a brand new episode of In Living Color at the exact same time as the halftime show. NBC did not want to lose viewership, so they brought in Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson sang some of his hit songs like Billie Jean and Black or White, and it made an impact on America with 133 million views, and it's still considered this day to be one of the most broadcasted and watched events in American TV history. Though no act would live up to Michael Jackson in the 90s, we would still get several big-name headliners throughout the rest of the decade, including Diana Ross when she performed in the 1996 halftime show. Because of these powerful acts, the NFL was able to get unique sponsorships throughout the rest of the 90s, including Royal Caribbean, Progressive Auto Insurance, and Oscar Mayer. The 90s officially became the decade where non-football fans would sit in front of their TVs to watch the halftime show. The 2000s would bring about some big-name headliners to capture the audiences in stadiums and on TV. The goal was to keep fans on the station and not leave their TVs. The year 2000 would start off with a bang, with Phil Collins, Christina Aguilera, and Enrique Iglesias. From 2000 to 2002, the show would be sponsored by E-Trade. The 2002 show would be one of the most memorable and impactful shows in history. And not just Super Bowls, not just concerts, pure emotional shows. It was a tribute to those who were killed in the 9/11 attacks. U2 would perform at the Louisiana Superdome, and it would be sponsored by Clear Channel Entertainment. U2 would give one of the greatest performances in Super Bowl and music history. They would start off with their song Beautiful Day, and millions across the US would have tears in their eyes. The show was simply incredible. The 2000s would bring about more great headlining acts. Most notably, in 2004, the famous Janet Jackson would perform. The show would have a $10 million sponsorship from AOL Top Speed, and it would have supporting acts like Justin Timberlake and Kid Rock. The show was notable for several reasons, including two controversies, as well as it being Justin Timberlake's big breakout as a solo artist. The first controversy was Nipplegate. Jackson would have a wardrobe malfunction while dancing with Justin Timberlake on stage, and many accused Jackson of doing it on purpose, even though they said several times after the event occurred that it was not done on purpose and it was just a simple wardrobe malfunction. The second was that Kid Rock was accused of desecrating the flag while performing. Neither of these controversies would really impact the artists' careers. The rest of the 2000s gave us some of the greatest acts in history, including Paul McCartney, the Rolling Stones, Prince, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and Bruce Springsteen. Some of these are considered to be some of the greatest acts of the 20th century. For the first part of the 2010s, Bridgestone would take over as the sponsor for the Super Bowl halftime show until 2003. After this, Pepsi would become the main sponsor of the various different shows with various different brands. This sponsorship would last until 2023 when Apple Music officially would take over. There would also be a shift in the 2010s and 2020s of establishing one main headliner with a special surprise guest. For example, when Madonna would perform, she would have special guests of LMFAO, Cirque du Soleil, Nicki Minaj, and High School Drummers for the 2012 performance. And another notable act would be in 2013 when Beyonce would perform and utilize Destiny's Child as a surprise guest. Throughout the 2010s and 2020s, we've seen some of the highest quality acts. It is incredible to see how far we've come since those early days of the Super Bowl. For the 2024 Super Bowl performance, we will be seeing Usher, and we are all excited for that. Who do you think should be this next Super Bowl halftime performer? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate all of you. Believable Truths.